Hello everyone, I'm Cosmic and welcome to Blackguards, a tactical turn-based role-playing game brought to you by Daedalic Entertainment. Released on Steam Early Access back in November 2013, Blackguards is quickly heading towards its official release date. Blackguards is set in the popular universe of The Dark Eye, one of Europe's most successful pen and paper RPGs. Not only is Blackguards set in the fantastically rich world of Aventuria, but it is in fact the first time that Southern Aventuria has been featured in a video game. Blackguards has been developed and published by Daedalic Entertainment. The German developer and publisher were originally founded back in 2007 and are currently based in Hamburg, Germany. Daedalic were also behind another popular Dark Eye game, The Chains of Satinav, and also developed the successful Memoria and Goodbye Deeponia games. On the publishing side of things, Daedalic published the critically acclaimed Torchlight 2 and are set to publish Larian Studios' upcoming title, Divinity Original Sin. Please note that at the time of recording, the game is still in early access, meaning it is still beta and things are subject to change, and also we have still yet to see the final 5th chapter of the game's story. So first off, let's take a look at character progression. So those of you who've seen my videos before know that I am a huge role-playing games fan and I like to have a deep progression system for my characters. As you would expect in a game based on the world of a pen and paper RPG, many of the Dark Eye systems and rules are transferred over to the game. The game actually uses a modified version of the 4th edition Dark Eye rule set. At the start of the game you can currently choose 3 classes, Warrior, Rogue or Mage, and these are just to determine the stats that you start the game with. The game actually is more of a classless system. Any character can learn any skill. The exception to this rule is that spells can only be learned by mages. There are also no traditional levels. Instead of characters leveling, they acquire AP or adventure points. These points are then used to upgrade your characters in whichever way you see fit. In terms of stats, there are 8 basic attributes: courage, cleverness, intuition, charisma, dexterity, agility, constitution and strength. Spending AP on these attributes will upgrade them, which will in turn upgrade your base values. Now there are 9 base values and these are used to affect the combat dice rolling system. The 9 base values are speed, astral energy, resistance to magic, initiative, ranged combat, dodge, parry, attack and vitality. One attribute can affect several base values. So for example, upgrading the strength attribute will increase your vitality, parry, attack and ranged combat values. Attributes not only affect base values, but you may need a certain level in a particular attribute to learn certain abilities too. So let's move on to the talent tree. Talents are essentially skills that have beneficial uses in combat. They are upgraded with adventure points, and new talents can only be learned by a trainer. An example of a talent is the body control talent, which helps improve resistance to knockdowns and negative environmental effects. Each level of a talent provides a bigger bonus, and while some are not strictly essential to survival in the game, they are all very useful. The weapon talent tree, on the other hand, is exactly that, the weapon talent tree. You can spend AP on a type of weapon and become more efficient in its use, and thus gain attack and defensive bonuses. In the weapons talent tree, you can also change where you put the stats on a particular weapon with the use of a slider. This means that if you wish a character who uses two-handed swords to focus more on attack rather than defense, you can place the majority of your weapon talent points into attack, but that means you will also suffer a defensive penalty. Mages are the only ones who have access to spells. There are 24 spells available in the game, and there is a good variety ranging from damage and debuff spells to healing and protective spells. Each spell can be upgraded to more powerful levels, and their effects and damage radius may change as they are upgraded. Even if you upgrade a spell, you will have the option in battle to use any version of that spell at any time. So if you want to use a fireball, for example, you will be asked by the radial system if you want to use level 1, level 2, level 3 of that spell. Spells themselves can only be learned in one of 2 ways. One is by speaking to a trainer in a town, and the other is finding a very rare and valuable magical tome. These tomes can be used on multiple characters, and some spells can only be learned via a magical tome. Now last on the character progression side of things is the ability tree. Now special abilities are both active and passive abilities that you can use in combat. Special abilities can only be learned from a trainer, and they do tend to be expensive but are essential to your survival. Special abilities range from things like the Power Blow, which is an attack for melee fighters, which is an activated combat ability, to Astral Regeneration, which is a mage passive that increases the regeneration of your magical points, and that is a passive ability. Now, before I get into the game's story, because you all know how much I absolutely love wittering on about stories, I want to talk about the core of the game, which is its combat. Blackguards has a turn-based combat system. It utilises a hex-based grid instead of traditional squares, and the game is based on a dice system. There's lots of number rolls and chances to hit for every action. Daedalic have done a great job of keeping the majority of the so-called background calculations hidden in the UI. For those of you who are number crunchers, however, you can expand the battle log to see every calculation that goes on in combat. So thus Daedalic have actually catered to both types of players, those who do love the numbers and those who don't love the numbers. So at the start of the combat, each character rolls a d6, which is a six-sided dice for those of you who don't play RPGs that often, and then this value that comes out of the six-sided dice roll is then added to their initiative value of that character. This then determines the turn lineup for the duration of the battle. However, should a character get a debuff that reduces their initiative value, this will be checked throughout the battle and then reflected in the turn lineup. At the start of each character's turn, they will get one movement turn and one action turn. You can also substitute your action turn for another movement turn if you need to cover more ground, for example. Attacking works off a d20 system. The game will roll a d20, and if the resulting value is lower than your attack value, you will have succeeded in hitting. Following this, another roll takes place to determine whether the enemy can dodge or parry, and assuming you pass that roll, a third roll will take place for damage. Ranged attacks from bows and crossbows work in the exact same way, except it goes off the ranged combat value rather than the standard attack value. Now in combat, Daedalic have actually opted to use a radial wheel system to use items, attack, use abilities or change weapon sets. By right-clicking anywhere on the map, the radial menu will appear and you'll be able to quickly select what action you want to take place. The radial system really makes combat feel really fluid and fast-paced, and it really is a lot better than having to crawl through various menus like you do in other traditional turn-based strategy games. The Blackguards combat system also contains an injury system known as wounds. Some attacks can wound, and if you or your enemy are wounded, it will be reflected on their character portrait in the lower left hand corner with a scratch mark. Wounds apply debuffs to values and they cannot be healed via potions. Wounds can only be removed by the treat wounds talent with a bandage or visiting a healer in a town. Wounding your enemies is extremely effective, especially against tougher foes. However, they can also be your downfall in drawn out fights. Spells in combat will become lifesavers in Blackguards. Spells are unique in that they cannot be blocked or dodged, and they also put out quite reliable damage and are sometimes vital in taking down enemies immune to traditional attacks. Spells do, however, come with their own drawbacks. There is a chance for the casting to fail, which can be lessened by upgrading certain abilities. They require astral energy to use, and magicians' astral energy often drains very quickly, especially if you're using high level spells. The final drawback of spells are the magicians themselves. Spells suffer massive penalties if you equip the caster with metallic armour, which of course you do want to avoid. So mages themselves are often very squishy and killed very easily if not defended by other party members. Battles in Blackguards are very addictive. They tend to be relatively short but by no means easy. The great thing about Blackguard's combat is in its difficulty. Some battles do require real thought and careful planning. The game is very challenging, but it's by no means overly difficult, and while it can be very unforgiving at times, the game autosaves after every battle, and even if you die, you do have the option just to start the battle from the start by the options menu. Fans of tactical turn-based RPGs will really get a kick out of the challenge Blackguards provides. One of the star features of combat is the interactive environments. In certain levels you will have objects placed around you that you can use. You can cut a rope, causing a hanging chandelier to crush enemies below it, ignite flammable swamp gas to burn opponents, and more. There are over 190 beautifully crafted battlefields in Blackguards. These are no mere random maps, these are hand-drawn, carefully thought out maps that not only feel unique, but some do really leave a lasting impression. On occasion, winning a battle may require some creative thinking. I had an encounter with a large swamp troll, and I could not damage this massive beast by conventional means. At least not enough before he absolutely wiped my party. The battlefield was a swamp with bubbly water in some places, and after several deaths, I realised that I was able to lure the troll into the bubbled area, which turned out to be flammable swamp gas, and ignite it, causing massive damage. This map alone left a really lasting impression with me. You will frequently get that aha moment when you figure out how to get past a really tough battle, and it is quite a rewarding and gratifying experience. So Blackguards is set in the southern region of Aventuria. You'll get to explore the Wild South, the slave-loving emirate of Mengbilla, and more. Travel occurs via the world map, which is a lovely hand-drawn piece of art, and while there are some open-world elements to Blackguards, much of the actual story and the questing is very, very linear. You can travel freely between the towns and encounter quest locations whenever you wish. Each town has a different amenities. Town amenities include an inn to rest your weary head and regenerate health and astral points, trainers where you can learn new abilities, talents and spells, and each trainer is different, a blacksmith where you can purchase weapons and armour, various merchants where you can buy an array of items and apparel, and healers to help cleanse your wounds. Some towns will also have quest givers or people to speak to learn more about the world or story. Each town is beautifully drawn, and each town and region do feel quite unique from each other. In terms of the graphics and sounds, I love the art style of Blackguards. The hand-drawn backdrops are just jaw-droppingly gorgeous. The character models suffer from some issues, however. In cutscenes, their lips don't match who is speaking, there is occasional some hair clipping too, but hopefully these little things will be ironed out come the full release. But overall, I really do like the art style. The enemy creature design is fantastic, and there are some really detailed monsters in the game, from atypical bandits to domineering giants. The musical score of Blackguards is really well done. It does really provide a really atmospheric feel to the game. The game does feature voice acting, and for the most part it is actually really well acted. The dialogue has clearly been well written and provides some really deep emotional moments to laugh out loud hysterical moments. As an avid RPG player and one who is all about story, I always hold my RPG stories to the highest standard. Daedalic have been great storytellers in the past, and Blackguards is thankfully no different. The game is dark and mature, which is just what I like. Often in RPGs, the more morally grey characters are the most enjoyable, relatable and overall liked characters of a given game, and in Blackguards this is the type of character that you will play. Instead of a group of moral paragons, which is just white bread boring, you play a band of rogues, trying to get by in the world and dealing with the events that have been thrust upon you. So the game starts and you choose your character, and the story starts with you hovering above the corpse of Princess Eleanor, who is currently being eaten by a wolf. After killing said wolf, you are then blamed for her death and sent to prison. But the strange thing is, you can't quite remember what exactly happened before you saw the wolf. And after being tortured and questioned for a name that you have no idea what they're talking about, so enters the fire-loving, fight-craving, elf-hating dwarf called Norim. And just as soon as you've met, you're then off on a daring prison break just to find out what the hell has just happened to you. The game's story will take you on a rollercoaster ride. It's filled with twists and turns, and it truly has some really memorable moments. The characters that you meet are dark, damaged and morally questionable, but they are also lovable, engaging and just bloody well written. The game is filled with moral choices, surprises and just great moments in general. The world feels very immersive, and it really captures everything you love about storytelling in role-playing games. The game's greatest asset is also its biggest disappointment. It leaves me as a player wanting more, so much more. While it is really a great game and there are hours and hours worth of content here, I'm just left with the feeling of wanting more. more of this world, more of the characters, and I really think it would be a fantastic idea for Daedalic to put more side quests in, more items including weapons and armor in, more dungeon areas, and a world map random encounter system into the game. Because there's no random encounters, everything is scripted in some way or another, and I think that a random encounter system would not only increase the longevity of the game, but it would also mean that you had a way to grind your adventure points without actually having to continue on the main quest, for example. I think by adding some, if not all of these elements, it would go a long way to appeasing the quest lover in me. Blackguards feels like Daedalic have really scratched the surface of something truly fantastic, but I want them to really flesh it out as much as possible. Even if they do not plan expansions, I would at least suggest opening the game up to the Steam Workshop so the community can provide some content. Whether the actual Dark Eye franchise would allow that to happen, I severely doubt it, but it's an idea anyway. Daedalic have just announced that they plan on putting in a advanced character creation mode, allowing you more customization from the offset of the game, though its implementation timeframe is still yet unknown, and we are still also waiting for the 5th chapter of the game, which will be coming at the end of this month, being January 2014. I know some players will complain about the difficulty in Blackguards because some fights are very frustrating and they can be quite time consuming, and they are very trial and error. I don't feel that it is overly difficult, the game, and I wouldn't have Daedalic change the difficulty in any way. I would have them maybe put some tweaks here and there, but nothing that would severely change the difficulty, because it is, as I've said, it isn't overly difficult, and I think that the challenging aspect of the game is what appeals to me as a player, because I am sick and tired of having games just hold my hand the way through. I like to be able to, I want a challenge as a gamer, and I think it's more of a bonus for the game rather than a negative. Overall, if you're a role-playing games fan, a turn-based strategy fan, or you just love a bloody good story, I cannot recommend Blackguards enough. It's one of those rare games that I literally lost track of time playing. The storytelling is good and engaging, battles, while not lengthy, have great solid mechanics and good depth to them. The world is fantastically immersive. Daedalic have envisioned Southern Aventuria beautifully. I will be doing another video on Blackguards once the 5th chapter has been released and I've completed it, just summing up my thoughts on the ending of the story, etc, etc. I'll leave a link in the description below to the Steam page where you can get your hands on the game now in early access. And as always, thank you so much for watching. Do like, leave a comment and subscribe, and I will see you next time.